In the last week's episode, we read a few stories about people who unwittingly picked up haunted stuffs. They had various nightmares, sleep paralysis, and scares of their lives, but in the end got off of the ordeal relatively unscathed. But today, our protagonist goes through much more terrifying consequences, including direct threat to his very life, all because he picked up somebody else's pair of glasses. As usual, it's presented as an allegedly true story, but I personally find it slightly too elaborate to be really true. Nevertheless, it touches the real and psychological anxiety of many young people living in modern Korea facing the tough future in the tight job market, as well as the interesting interplay of three traditional backbones of Korea's spiritual worldview of shamanism, Taoism, and Buddhism. It's a long one, but I hope you enjoy it. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. When this happened, I was in my late 20s and preparing for the civil service exam, or at least that was my convenient excuse for being jobless and living off my parents' support. Having graduated from a mid-range university with no distinction or ambition, I just decided to try my luck with a civil service exam and went to Noryangjin, the quarter in Seoul catering for people in the similar boat, full of cram schools in preparation for the exam, cheap rooms, and cheap restaurants. As in any kind of society, only about 10% of the people gathered there were really serious and hardworking, while 60% was spending more time in internet cafes, bars, and game arcades than in cram schools. As for me, I was neither. Not at all hardworking, but not quite partying hard either. A lukewarm, grey life as it always has been. The more anxious I felt about the future, the bigger the temptation to do something to forget it all, like spending time in the game arcade. So that night too, when I couldn't focus on books after dinner, I went to the game arcade with my pocket full of 101 coins. At least that was a cheap escape for a couple of hours, comparing to most other options. I went for my usual favorite game and got to battle out with another gamer. We were more or less equal level, and I fought valiantly, but kept losing at the last minute for several times. I soon ran out of coins. I briefly thought to leave it there, but my competitive blood had already heated up, so rushed back to my room to fetch more money. But when I got back to the arcade, the opponent gamer wasn't there anymore. Sudden sense of self-remorse flooded back, so I returned to my room like a loser that I was, and opened my book. Only then I realized I didn't have my glasses with me. Shit, must have left them in the arcade. I ran back there, pulling my own hair. It was by then near the closing hour. The arcade was almost empty, and the staff was starting to turning off the machines. And I could not find my glasses. A new pair would cost me a fortune. It was then when I saw a pair of glasses left on several game machines down. They were clearly not mine. I tried them on anyway, and what a coincidence, they seemed to almost match my own prescription. I know I shouldn't have, but I just quietly walked out of the arcade with the strange glasses on. I felt strange chill as I did, but maybe it was just a brief pang of conscience, I thought. Indeed, as I breathed in the cold night air outside, I felt more relief that I got a substitute glasses. But just a few steps down the road, bang! I collapsed to the ground with an excruciating pain on my face. Apparently, I walked right into a lamp post. How could I be so blind? Fortunately, the glasses were still intact despite the collision. Back in my room, I decided to call it a day. I wasn't really in the mood to open my book after all the running up and down. But I could not go to bed before my nightly ritual. Any player of role-playing games would know this expedient to put your character run on auto-program to earn valuable game items. It's considered as the lowest cheat among gamers, and if found out, the perpetrator could be shunned off from the community. But for a poor jobless like me, it provided a small pocket money that I couldn't resist. So that night too, I found a quiet corner to run my character on the auto set and set the laptop screen towards the bed so that I could check on the progress throughout the night. In the middle of the night, I peeped at the screen as my usual habit. Oh, why was my laptop off? When I stood up from bed, I noticed that wasn't the only thing amiss. My duvet and pillow were gone, and even though there was not a light in the room, I could see everything clearly as if my eyes had become an infrared camera. The only difference was the view wasn't green, but more grey. I pushed the on-off button of my notebook, but it wouldn't turn on, however hard and many times I tried. Something wasn't right. I decided to get out and first reached for the glasses. And I noticed the glasses alone took on a clean shape and color in otherwise hazy grey world. I could not dare to touch them and just turned to the door. But the door knob would not turn at all, as if they were made into a solid piece to the door. I was getting more and more uncomfortable. Maybe I should call somebody? I turned to my jacket in whose pocket I left my phone. But my jacket was gone too. Should I scream for help or something? I checked the alarm clock next to bed and saw it was midnight, not a minute more or less, but exactly 12 o'clock. That was impossible. When I left the game arcade for more coins, it was already 11:30. I didn't check time afterwards, but there was no way that I could have walked up and down between the arcade and my room twice, brushed my teeth, set the auto-run on game, and actually slept however little, all just in 30 minutes. I took a close look at the clock and noticed it actually stopped exactly at midnight, hour, minute, and second hands, all of them. I could not think straight anymore and ran to the window to scream for help. But when I looked out, all I could utter was the low moan of shit. Noryangjin is a very densely populated area. No matter what time of the night, there will be always lights, cars, and people on and running about. But I could not see a single light, not a person. And just as in my room, everything looked grey. It was so unreal that I thought it must be a dream. I should just go to bed and sleep it off. Even the bed felt hard and uncomfortable, but by then I just wanted to ignore everything and fall back to sleep. I closed my eyes, but the harder I tried to sleep, the heavier it felt the oppressive silence around me. I counted lambs, recited the lyric of popular songs, thought of scenes of my favorite animation, just about anything to distract myself from the situation. When I woke up, it was morning, and everything was back to normal in my room. Duvet, pillow, jacket were all there. I could open the door again, and the glasses were there where I had left. God, what a creepily real and odd dream that was. But I didn't have time to think about it. My first lesson at the cram school was due in 15 minutes. I just jumped in my clothes and ran. Fortunately, the cram school was just a road across from my room, and by some luck, there wasn't any car passing on the usually busy road. I checked each side once again and just started crossing on red light. Are you nuts? I realized the bus had stopped short, barely a half-meter from me. I couldn't understand. I did check on each side for any cars approaching. The driver kept shouting at me, but already late and baffled, I just said sorry and resumed running to the school. The lesson had already started by the time I arrived. The tutor was particularly strict about punctuality, and I dared not enter the room. Self-remorse flooded in again. What was I to become in this pace? I just decided to find an empty lecture room and prepare for the next lesson. But well, not long after I was already dozing off. But I snapped out with a startle. What if the odd dream from the last night resumed? I shuddered and went to the toilet to give myself a splash of cold water. The toilet was empty. I took the glasses off and washed my face with cold water, and then lifted my head again. What? On the mirror wasn't my reflection. In fact, there was nothing at all on the mirror. I looked around and found everything looking in grey, just like in the last night's dream. And as again, only the glasses maintained its distinctive color. But this couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. I was about to scream, but before I did it, I once again realized the oppressive silence around me, so heavy that it almost felt like it would suck out any sound from me had I tried. I tried to open the toilet door, but just like last night, the knob didn't even turn. I crashed my shoulder with all my weight to the door too, but neither the door budged, nor I felt any pain from the crash. I was now having a proper panic attack. I couldn't stand just standing there. I couldn't hide myself in the cubicle. I feared something terrifying would jump out at me from the grey space. Gasping for air as if I had just finished 100-meter sprint, I kept looking around the space like a madman for a good 5 minutes or so, till my knees finally gave in, and I just collapsed and bursted into tears.
Hey, are you okay?
I looked up with a startle, and there was a guy looking down on me. I wiped my tears and looked around. The reflection was back on the mirror.
Are you alright?
The man asked me again. I just mumbled, yeah, and headed towards the door. I didn't want to stay there any second more.
Aren't these yours?
The man said. He was holding the glasses I left on the sink. Keep it, I said.
What?
Nothing, thank you. I took the glasses, but something was telling me that everything started to go wrong because of the glasses. I ran to the game arcade and dropped the glasses where I first found it. I went back to my room, hoping everything returned to normal now. It was comical that I should still feel hungry after all these, but I did. I warmed up a frozen pizza and set myself down at my laptop. I wanted to see if anybody experienced anything like I experienced. Nothing quite like my own, but I came across a story about a haunted week. But my heart dropped as I scrolled down the story. It said one mustn't just throw away haunted objects away, but burn it off. I dropped everything and ran back to the arcade again. To my relief, the glasses were still there. I took them to the toilet and tried to light a fire with my lighter, but of course, the plastic frame wouldn't just catch a fire. Would it still work if I just melted it? I was so afraid if the world wouldn't turn to all grey again. I wished it was rather that I were chased after by a ghost or something. That would have been at least more tangible kind of fear. I needed a professional help that would explain me this mystery once and for all. I thought to seek a shaman, but I had no cash on hand. I couldn't possibly call my parents and tell them, "Mom, I picked up a haunted glasses and need a shaman." In the end, I sold game items that I had saved up and raised about 500,000 won, about $400. I had never sought a shaman before and never paid any attention on such matters, so I had absolutely no idea where to find one to start with. I barely remembered which part of the town had a street full of shamans and fortune tellers, and just took a taxi there. The glitzy ones with big signs I could not somehow trust, so I chose relatively small and humble-looking one. A skinny 40-something looking woman didn't look like a shaman I had imagined a shaman should look like. She looked at me a while and said, "A ghost stewing, eh?" Typical opening line for a shaman, I thought, and didn't reply. "Nothing's going right, isn't it?" That would be the case for the half of the young people living today. I was quickly losing my trust in her already and just rolled my eyes. "You have lots of worries in you. But don't worry, I can chase the damn thing away. Are you a student by any chance?" "I am." I could see she was losing interest quickly on her part too. A poor student wouldn't make a lucrative client after all. Okay, well, I'll write you a powerful talisman. Just paid 70,000. It's a special price since you're a student," she said. "It's okay. It has already helped me much, thank you. I'll just pay the base fee," I said. 40,000 won then? What a waste of money and time. Would I be able to find an authentic shaman in this pace before I run out of money? I just pulled out my wallet to pay and go quickly, and the glasses fell from my pocket. The shaman's eyes suddenly got big. "What? What's that?" "Excuse me?" Wasn't she a total phony after all? "Do you mean the glasses?" I said. "Shh!" Shaman desperately pulled my shoulder towards her and put her finger to her lips to shush me. But I wouldn't let her slip so easy. "Why? Do you sense something unusual?" I said. The shaman looked at me baffled as if wanting to give me a hard slap, but soon she was just started shuddering all over. Her expression was as if I was keep making a noise while a tiger was passing near us. But what did I care if I were already in the grip of the tiger? "Tell me, why, are they haunted or something?" I continued. Shaman desperately waved her arms with a frowned face. She silently mouthed, No, it's not that." "What is it then?" I asked. She was now silently crying. I was frustrated she wouldn't just tell me what it was, but she was clearly scared of something. I realized that meant it was really bad for me. Shaman ripped off a page from some sort of book on her table and scribbled down hastily. It read, "Please, just go and don't come back, I beg you. Seek Guru named Cao Yuin. The address is below." "Don't I need to pay?" I asked. but now she was just kowtowing towards me, not even looking up. I had to just retreat with even heavier heart than when I entered her establishment. At the address the shaman gave me, I learned Guru Cao Yuan had passed away a decade ago. But his pupil was still around, and I was given his contact number. Things seemed to be going further south, and I really didn't know what to think or do anymore. But if that was the only lead I got... I first texted a pupil of the Guru explaining such and such was happening to me. To my surprise, the pupil replied quickly, and it led to a short phone call. He called the shaman I met a half-shaman, who made living by pretending to predict future or to know how to turn the fortune around, rather than actually dealing with spirits as real shamans are supposed to do. Considering she recognized something and was terrified so much despite her meager ability, what was troubling me should be one of the two, he explained. Either a soul of an aborted baby who died so young that a shaman simply could not communicate and persuade, or, rather rare case in Korea, but something Westerners would call an evil or demon, a spiritual entity which was not originated from human soul but from the accumulation of all the negative energy from people. As such, it didn't have its own context or reason, but sheer intent to harm whoever and however. I felt on one hand more worried hearing what he told me, but on the other hand also somewhat consoled that there was somebody who could explain me things. He said he wasn't available right away, but would see me 2 days later. At least now I had a ray of hope, but still didn't know how I would survive another 2 days. Whatever it was that was influencing me clearly meant to harm me. Come to think of it, I suspect it was all this thing's doing that I totally obliviously bumped into the lamppost or was almost hit by a bus. God knows how and what more it might try on me. I was so afraid to stay alone for 2 days, so decided to take refuge at my parents', though I was absolutely unwilling to. It was already past midnight when I arrived home. "Why are you home? What about tomorrow's lessons? What's going on?" was my mom's welcome. "Oh, Mom, I'm really tired," I said. "You are driving me mad! What about your study?" "Mom, please." Our heated back and forth attracted Dad out from his room too.
What's the commotion?
Dad said. "Nothing. I'm just home, that's all," I said.
Why are you here? And why are you shouting to your mother?
"Dad, I have..."
When will you behave like an adult, huh? Do you expect to succeed with that kind of attitude?
You see, that's why I didn't want to come home. I could retreat to my room only after I was all tattered up by my parents' attack. And being home didn't save me from my ordeal either. I woke up in the middle of the night. Even before I opened my eyes, I knew it. This hard, cold feeling, and both my duvet and pillow were gone too. When I opened my eyes, oh, it wasn't that grey vision this time, it was just dark. Yet I could already sense I wasn't in my familiar room. As my eyes got used to the darkness, I realized I was in a staircase hall. I looked down, fearing if something wouldn't pop out from the darkness, and indeed something was coming up. Water. The water was rising slowly but surely from the downstairs. The dark liquid seemed black and dense, with no ripple or flushing noise. Once fallen in, it looked like it would suck me down to its pitiless darkness. I hurried my way up the stairs away from it. Suddenly, lights came on as from motion-detecting switch. I noticed I was in the staircase hall of my apartment block. Everything looked perfectly real, from dust ball at one corner to a dark chewing gum stain on the step. What? Wasn't I dreaming? Was this real? But that black water was still rising constantly. Under the light, it looked even creepier, as its blackness seemed coming not from the color of the water itself, but from its bottomless abyss. I had to keep running away from the water. Everything felt so real to be a dream. At the next floor, I was going to bang on the door and ask for help, I thought. But when I reached there were no flats and no doors, just blank walls. I ran one more floor, but again there were no doors but empty walls. Everything was still frighteningly real otherwise, from the lamp that turned on as I reached each floor down to the insects flying about in the light. All the while the water was closing in, and the only way was upwards. I was soon going breathless, and my bare feet were hurting bad. Was I to drown this way in the end? When I thought I could not run any more, I ran into a door for the first time. It didn't look like a normal apartment door, but heavier, older iron door that seemed to have untouched for a long time. But anything would be better than the black water. I pushed, kicked, and banged the stiff door. When I finally managed to open it, I found myself up on the rooftop. Water was keep rising relentlessly, and now pouring over the rooftop too. I looked around and found the next building's rooftop seemed just about close enough to jump over. Risky, but anything seemed better than letting that ominous water even touch my feet. I started sprinting to jump over to the next building, but before I could reach the edge, I stepped on my own foot and fell hard. Pain was excruciating, but water was closing in. I jumped up and kept running. But what? I could not see the next building in the close distance anymore. It was now just an empty space all the way to the playground on the ground. Confused, I looked around, and there was no black water closing in either. Standing in the chilly dark air, I realized what had happened. That thing, evil, demon, or whatever, hallucinated me to drive me to death. Had I not fallen and broken the illusion, I would have jumped off the rooftop and fell to my death. To the world, I would be just a loser who chose to commit suicide. But why me? Why was this happening to me? I might be a loser, but I didn't do anything to deserve that kind of dog's death. Was that evil thing somewhere in the dark watching me shudder and waiting for the next chance to kill me off? I felt so weak and helpless, like a little child, that I collapsed and cried. It was then that I realized I was wearing that damn glasses. I snatched them off and threw out 18 floors down. They disappeared in the darkness, but I could not hear any sound of them hitting the ground. I moved my shaky legs back down to my parents' flat. My uncontrollable whimper woke my parents up. I could not contain myself anymore and just told them that I was haunted by some ghost, and it tried to kill me by making me jump off the rooftop. Here I should tell you about my dad. His father, my grandfather, was a Buddhist monk before he got married and got my dad. The reason he chose to become a monk was because he had sixth sense. He could feel and see ghosts and deities. Having grown up under such a father, My unlikely story wasn't entirely outlandish for my dad. He took me to his room and let his grown-up son sleep next to him. He assured me that we should visit a Buddhist temple the following day. I didn't say anything, but I was so grateful to him for taking my story so sympathetically. Next morning, we drove good 3-4 hours down to the southern province to visit the temple Dad mentioned. It was big and crowded with the tourists and hikers. Dad talked to a monk there who seemed to be well acquainted with already. The monk guided us through a small back door that led to a path up the mountain. I followed Dad and the monk up the hill, but I got exhausted much quicker than I normally would. The monk said to Dad that it was the spirit pulling me back because he didn't want to leave. Problem was, both he and the monk were a few meters ahead of me, but his quiet whisper rang close in my ears. Not 20 minutes into the walk, I just could not go on anymore. Even my vision got blurred. Dad and the monk supported me, but I reacted with a sudden outburst of, "Shit! Leave me alone!" I pushed them away and ran back down. Unlike just a moment ago, my feet were light and my vision returned sharp too. The monk followed me, and to me, his gentle face looked like that of a terrifying monster. I desperately ran away from him and hid myself behind a bush. It was comical that I thought that I could hide from him behind that thin, low bush, but clearly I wasn't myself, and my body moved by itself. When I saw the monk approaching me, my heart dropped. Before I passed out, the last thing I remember was the reaping scream from my own mouth, sharp and shrill like that of a woman. When I woke up, I was in a small temple deep in the mountain. Dad told me that I slept like a dead man for a full day. I was told that I should stay there for a week and offer 108 bows to Buddha every evening. I got crushing headache as soon as I stood in front of the statue of Buddha, and after the 108 bows, I passed out to sleep totally exhausted. But day by day, I felt myself slowly recovering, and nothing odd happened to me anymore either. On the 4th day, 3 strange monks came to the temple, and all 6 monks watched me starting my daily 108 bows. Soon they started chanting scriptures, and unintended swear popped out from my mouth.
"Shut up, you bald heads!"
Then one monk struck me on my shoulder with a bamboo shinai. The pain alone was enough to make me fall back on knees, and that way I kept glaring, swearing, and being struck back down throughout the whole 108 bows. That night, I had a dream. I knew I was dreaming and felt a pressing sense that I had to get out of the dream quickly. The scene suddenly switched to the rooftop of the apartment, and with that, the point of view also to that of a third person. I observed myself walking up the stairs and out the rooftop. Next to me was another young man, looking just about the same age as myself. When I reached the edge of the rooftop and swayed as to fall down any second, that young man held my shoulder and stopped me from falling. As I dropped on the ground and cried, he watched on with sad eyes. He then turned his head to look at the observing me. Facing his soulful eyes, I said, despite of myself, "I'm sorry. I didn't know they are yours. I'll give them back." To that, the man moved to the edge of the rooftop, pointing at the floor, and then jumped off. As soon as I woke up, I ran to Dad. Dad, I have to look for the glasses. He wants it back, the glasses. I had to explain what it was all about to Dad and the monk who brought me there, and he agreed it could be the way to persuade the spirit. So we drove back to Seoul, including the monk himself, in case I should face another dangerous situation. The whole family set to search for the glasses. We went through every litter bin on the property, knocked and inquired after all the neighbors, but we could not find it into the late evening. My mom cooked dinner for me, and my younger brother threw silly jokes to keep my mood light, but everyone could not hide a sad anxiety. Despite the effort not to fall asleep, I dozed off in front of the TV and got a dream. I was playing a game in the game arcade and kept losing the battle, just like the night that everything had started. I shouted, "Oh, shit!" with exasperation, and a young man looked up at me from across the room. Then his sad face suddenly turned into that of a raging monster and screamed,
"You! Where are my glasses? Why aren't you giving back to me?"
I woke up with a scream, waking everybody up. And just then, it flashed to me that the glasses might have fallen to the flower bed. That must be why I could not hear it crushing to the ground. "I found it!" I shouted and ran down to the flower bed. And indeed, there they were. We took them to the temple and burned them with a ritual. And that was it. I was at last free from the cursed state. A year passed. I gave up the civil service exam and was looking for a work. One day I was on a metro train passing Noryangjin area. I must have dozed off, and I had a dream. As in real life, I was on metro train. Outside the window was a golden sunset shining on the river, and I was just mesmerized with the view. Soon the train stopped at Noryangjin, and a young man got on. Wearing a new navy suit and shining new shoes, he was clearly on his way to a job interview. He took out some papers and read them silently. He frowned, seemingly having a difficulty to focus, and took out a pair of glasses. A smile came on his face now that he could see better. He lifted his head and said,
"Thank you."
I woke up. Outside the window was the view of the golden river under the evening sunset, just like in the dream. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you for listening. That was quite a story, and I hope you enjoyed it. As usual with most other story about haunted objects, we are left in the dark what the true history of the object in question might have been. But well, an object can't really explain the full story, I guess. If you enjoyed my work, please leave me a comment and a like, and do consider subscribing to my channel that still misses your love a big time. I'll come back with something different next Sunday. Stay safe and take care.